Hey guys, it's Adrian. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm here to bring you the first in a 4-part series, and I'm calling it my series. How original. I know. As the year has started, I am trying to figure out where I am in all the series that I have going on. I did an unfinished series TBR last year around this time. I'll leave it up here in the description box for you in case you want to check it out. And I thought about just doing an update on that, but things got a little complicated in between. So what I've decided to do is to update you on all what I've got going on for all my series, and then I've put it all in a nice Excel sheet because those are fantastic, and then I can kind of keep track of where I'm at and which ones I want to get finished next so that I can keep making progress and not just keep starting new series because I've got problems. Today's video is the series that I'm going to DNF. I am sorry if some of these are your favorite series. I could be convinced maybe to read some of them. Perhaps if I found the second book in the library, or if I read them on audiobook, or if I found them really cheap in a thrift shop, I might continue on with them. But as far as paying full price for a new book, I'm not gonna do it because I just didn't love the series enough. The funny thing is, a lot of these I started a couple years ago before I started BookTube, and I noticed that I was really lenient on my star ratings. Some of them are 4 stars, and I definitely would not have given them a 4 stars reading them 2 years later. They just weren't that great. So if I have a 4-star book and I say I'm DNFing this series, I really didn't like it. I just was being nice. Speaking of books that got a higher rating than they probably should have, the first up is The Passenger Duology by Alexandra Bracken. I read the first one, Passenger, and it follows a girl named Etta who is a violinist, and she wants nothing more than to be a musician until she finds out one day that she is secretly from a line of time travelers, and she has to go back in time on this mission where she meets a captain named Nick, and they go on an adventure. I gave this one a 4 stars. Probably going back, I probably would have given it a 3 stars. I liked it, but it was kind of boring for me. I wasn't a huge fan. I'm not opposed to reading Wayfarer, which is the second book, but I don't want to buy it, and I would probably do it on audiobook. But there's just so many other books that I want to read that I'm not going to waste my time on a series that I'm not really all that interested in. So I'm going to DNF this one. Who knows, in the future, like I said, I might change my mind, but for now, this one is definitely getting DNF'd in favor of other series. Next up, we have the Traitor Spy trilogy by Trudy Canavan. This is a follow-up trilogy from her Black Magician trilogy, which I read years and years ago, and I absolutely loved, but I didn't like it. I found the story kind of lacking, the writing style was very young, and I couldn't relate to it, and I found it really disappointing. So I'm not going to be continuing on this series because I really want to just keep my love for the Black Magician trilogy, which I did love. And that one is about a girl named Sonia, and she is from a poorer class, and she finds out that she is in fact a magician and she has magic. So she has to go to this magician's guild, which is mostly for upper class people because never before has there been a lower class person that has magic. And it follows her journey through that school and School of Magicians. So this was way before I even knew about Harry Potter that I read this, and I really loved it. So if you are looking for a YA School for Magicians kind of book, I do recommend that trilogy. That's the Black Magicians trilogy. But the Traitor Spy trilogy, the follow-up to that one, I wasn't a huge fan on, so that one is getting DNF'd. Next up is the Wolf by Wolf duology by Ryan Groden. I read this one, Wolf by Wolf, and I have not yet read the second one, Blood for Blood. I wasn't a huge fan. This one follows a girl named Yael, or Yale, I'm not really sure how to pronounce her name, and she is from the time of World War II, and this story follows what if Hitler had actually won the war, and she was one of the scientific projects that was going on during World War II, and she has turned into a shapeshifter. So she shapeshifts into someone who is part of a motorcycle race so that she can win the motorcycle race, get to Hitler, and assassinate him. That's what this story is about. It was interesting. It was okay. I gave this one a 3.5, I think, maybe 4 stars. I wasn't a huge fan, so I don't particularly need to continue on with the series. Probably the biggest reason that I didn't like this book is I'm not a huge fan of sci-fi, and this is a sci-fi one. So in favor of other books, again, I'm going to DNF this one as well. Next up is one that I've talked about a lot on my channel, and that's the Wayward Children series. I read the first one, Every Had a Doorway by Sanaa Maguire. This one follows a bunch of different children who have, one way or another, made their way into a magical world and now have been sent back, and they're struggling with being back and they don't want to be back. I did like the world building on this. I talked all about that in my last Top 5 Wednesday video, but I just didn't like the story itself. It was too dark for me, so I have no interest in finishing it. Next up is the School for Good and Evil trilogy. I also talked about this in my last Top 5 Wednesday video. This one, I did like the first book. I gave the first book a 4 stars. The second book I only ended up giving it 2 2.5 stars, and I didn't like it. And the reason that I didn't like it is because I found these books to be very confusing for young children. This series is for 8 years old plus, and I do not see my 8-year-old daughter reading these. So that's why I was really harsh on these. The first one I kind of could forgive because I did enjoy. The second one I found more confusing as far as the choices that Sophie and Agatha were making, as far as sexuality, as far as a lot of things. There was no real clear-cut message. Everything was kind of open-ended. I don't know if the third book kind of solves the problem. The reason that I read the second one was because I was hoping that it would solve the problem, and it didn't. It just made it worse. So I'm afraid to read the third book, because if that one is even similar to the second one, then I'm just going to hate the series altogether. So I think I'm just going to leave it for what it is and DNF the series. And next up we have the Percy Jackson series. I read Percy Jackson and Lightning Thief and Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters in Eric Riordan. I gave the first one a 3 stars, I gave the second one a 2 stars. I was not a huge fan, but that's mostly because I am an adult and I can't really appreciate middle grade mythology. I just didn't like it. I do think that my 8-year-old would think it was absolutely fantastic when she gets a little bit older and I allow her to read them. So for me, the series got a DNF because I personally didn't like it, but I do think that it's a great middle grade series, and I do think that middle graders would love the series. So I can appreciate Rick Riordan's writing for what it is, but for me, it wasn't a huge fan. And last up is the Alex Devlin duology. This one is The Bad Things. The second one, I'm not really sure what the second one is called. I read this one, I gave it a 3 stars. This one was supposed to be a thriller. It was a murder mystery. I didn't really find it very thrilling, and I found it very predictable. If I ever did find a book like this on a thrift store or an audiobook, I might read it because I am curious to see what happens with Alex in the next book. But the story itself, I wasn't a huge fan of. This one is told from the perspective of Alex, who so many years ago, I think it was 10 or 15 years ago, her niece and nephew were kidnapped from her backyard, and her nephew was found murdered and her niece was never found. So this was basically a whodunit murder mystery, and I already knew whodunit from the beginning of the book, so it wasn't, like I said, very surprising. It wasn't a terrible book, it wasn't a great book. So for now, it's DNF'd, unless I find a copy for like a buck at a thrift store, and then I would read it. So that wraps it up for the first part of this series. Again, I'm sorry if any of these are your favorites, but those are all the series that I plan on DNFing. Just because they didn't work out for me doesn't mean they're not fantastic series. So if you were still interested in reading them, or they are your favorites, by all means, read them. I just personally didn't like them. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you have not yet, I'd love for you to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye!